Since I started this job, I've been privileged to go all over the country. I have been to solar farms. I've been to wind farms. I've seen the panels. I've traveled overseas. I've met with officials from other nations. But one of the most interesting and innovative clean energy projects that I've been privileged to see was done by high school students. Earlier this year, I visited West Philadelphia High School, where a student group there, students at that school, are building a hybrid car. The vast majority of the students at West Philly are minorities. Many of them come from the neighborhood around the school, and it is one that is poor, disadvantaged, and underserved. From this place where no one would expect it, comes something extraordinary. And that's the story of this movement. That's the story of our moment. The hybrid car that those students are building at West Philly has outperformed other cars built by teams at the most advanced and prestigious universities in our country and around the world, and some of the most highly funded private enterprises as well. These are high school students from the inner city who are taking their car to compete against other hybrid vehicles this year from around the world at the Progressive Automotive X Prize. If they win, and they have a good shot to win. In fact, they just recently made it to round 2. More than half of their competitors are gone. They'll take home $10 million. I love telling that story. It is an amazing story, but it's not the only one. That's because this is the first generation that is taking action in earnest on climate change and on clean energy. This is the first generation whose cars are likely to run on electricity. This is the first generation whose homes will be connected to a smart grid and who will get energy from wind turbines. It's the first generation that is graduating college and looking for jobs, green jobs. And you are the first generation that has not asked, but demanded that we stop the damage greenhouse gases are doing to your world. In response to your demand, we have acted. Recently, EPA and DOT announced a program to increase fuel efficiency and decrease harmful emissions from American vehicles. We finalized a rule to track greenhouse gases from the nation's largest sources, and we proposed a new rule to use the Clean Air Act to cut emissions from large sources by raising the standards for innovative clean technology on those facilities. To give you a sense of how much things have changed, I announced that proposed rule at the Governor's Climate Summit in California. I have to tell you, that summit was hosted by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, and one of the speakers right before me was Harrison Ford. Today, they are two leaders in our fight for a cleaner environment, but when I was younger, maybe your age, they were the Terminator and Han Solo. So I was up on stage wondering if I was going to be the only one without my own action figure. So we're working on that. Believe me, things have changed, and they will keep on changing. And finally, EPA has submitted to the White House, our White House, the long-awaited endangerment finding on CO2. All of these efforts accompany billions of dollars for clean energy jobs in the Recovery Act, a strong push to get a clean energy and climate bill through Congress and onto the President's desk for signature. This is the first generation to make all of that possible. That's why we've asked you to join us for our conversation today. Now let me close with a word about those students back at West Philly High. They are an important example, not just because they're young, not just because they're not what you think of as entrepreneurs, but because they're not what you think of as quote-unquote environmentalists. They are part of another important change we're seeing in your generation, a change to the very heart of the environmental movement, the movement itself. To keep momentum growing behind clean energy and climate action, we have to expand the conversation on environmentalism, open it up to new kinds of environmentalists. These are people who might not, even when we start or when we're done, label themselves as environmentalists, but people whose lives are touched every day by environmental issues. They come from communities that haven't always been part of the conversation. Communities like West Philly, communities like my beloved 9th Ward in New Orleans, communities like Southeast DC. These are neighborhoods. They're neighborhoods extremely vulnerable to environmental and economic challenge. They stand to benefit the most from green jobs, the most from lower energy costs, the most from cleaner air. And they can be a powerful force for all of us in this debate. As the young leaders of the environmental movement, I challenge you to continue to expand the conversation and welcome, find, seek out, and hear those voices. Make sure that every community can be part of the unprecedented changes you are working so hard on that can be brought about by this generation. Thank you so much for being here. Can't wait to hear your questions.